What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we begin talking about one of the most popular classes that's out there in D&D, and that is the Rogue. But is it worth all of the hype? We'll have to find that out today as we compare it to all of the other classes. Before we jump into it though, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know down below what your favorite rogue subclass is and which one you are looking forward to the most as we cover all of those in the upcoming weeks. So yeah, I'm back. I'm back. I've been putting Pokemon content out for the past few weeks, and if you haven't checked that out, it's really fun stuff. It's really cool. Basically fantasy football, but for Pokemon. I'm a part owner of that league, and so it's a lot of fun. So make sure to check that out. But we are back with D&D content today. I kept kind of delaying it as I was thinking I was going to have my room together a lot quicker than what actually is happening. And so I didn't want to keep pushing it off any longer. So here we are. We are back, and my background is just going to kind of be cluttered right now. And that's just kind of how it is. And my mic quality isn't going to be as good. It's going to be a little more echoey than before just because I don't have all of my sound reduction stuff up because we still need to paint in here. So that'll be coming eventually, but for now I wanted to make sure that I'm giving you all content. I've gotten some comments asking when I'm coming back and all that good stuff, so here I am. Here we are. We are doing our rogue ranking today, and we start on all the subclasses starting next week. So really exciting stuff. I'm pumped. I hope you all are as well. Let's go ahead and jump in though. What is the rogue, right? What makes a rogue a rogue? Well, the rogue gets a lot of stereotypes centered around it, right? You have the sad person whose parents have died and now has turned to a life of crime, right? It falls into that stereotype a lot. And yeah, there are plenty of characters that do fit all of those descriptors, but there are a lot of different ways that you can play a rogue, right? And there's a lot of variance when it comes to your subclasses, of course, which we will be covering over the next few weeks. I think that the rogue has a lot of potential for different types of role play and different types of things that you can do with it besides just am sad, lost parents, do lots of damage, haha, I'm sneaky, right? There's a lot more that you can do with that. So how well does it stack up against the other classes? Let's find out. One thing to note that I always mention before I do any of my class rankings is that this video is a very imperfect system when it comes to ranking classes against each other. The reason I say that is because we remove the idea of subclasses from it in order to make it as fair as possible. Problem is, there's no realistic character that actually would not have a subclass, right? Every character is going to have one. You will get other features that either boost up your class or whatever it happens to be. And yes, this ends up leading to some classes being somewhat artificially boosted or nerfed, depending on what it happens to be. I understand that, but there's really not a great way of doing that, because even if you take an average subclass and go across the board, average for one class isn't necessarily average for another, and you can't really compare subclasses of one class to another subclass. It doesn't really work that way. So yeah, I think that this is the best way to do it, although I do acknowledge that it is an imperfect system. With that out of the way, let's start taking a look at what we get. Like always with these types of videos, we're going to start off with our hit dice, our proficiencies, what we get for starting equipment, even though that doesn't carry as much weight as everything else. But we have a D8 hit die, which is, in the grand scheme, the second worst one that's out there. So it's not great. We're not going to be very bulky. We're not going to have a ton of HP. So that's not the best, right? Let's look at proficiencies though. We have only light armor. Okay, that's not the best, although we are going to be a dexterity based character most of the time, so that pretty much evens that out. If you're dexterity based, you're typically not going to want anything more than light armor anyway, so it ends up being okay. For weapon proficiencies, we have kind of a weird list: simple weapons, hand crossbows, long swords, rapiers, and short swords. Now, for some of these, like the longsword, I don't see a lot of rogues using longswords. Rapiers and short swords, yeah, I can see that just because you have the finesse property there, but You know, longswords I don't see used as much. I'd love to know what you use a longsword for on a rogue. I'd love to see that build, but typically you're going to see a rapier for a melee option, and then you may have a crossbow or maybe even a longbow on the ranged side if you wanted to do that as well. As far as proficiencies go, Thieves' Tools, right? I talk about tool proficiencies not really being all that important in Dungeons & Dragons, and most of the time that's true unless you're really playing into the optional rules in Xanathars. But Thieves' Tools are kind of a requirement for rogues in order to, you know, be a rogue. So that's fair, it comes with it. Then of course we get 2 different saving throw proficiencies. We get a good one and a bad one. The good one, of course, dexterity, very common, that's gonna come up all the time, and intelligence, it's never going to happen. You're hardly ever going to have an intelligence saving throw. Pretty sure there's like 6 spells in the whole game that do an intelligence saving throw. It's not going to come up. It's really not going to come up. So it is what it is. Then for skills, we actually get 4 skills of our choice from a very long list. Here's the list on screen right now. These are great skills. These are really, really great skills. Notably, of course, we have things like insight, perception, persuasion, and stealth. I like those a lot. Stealth, of course, plays into the rogue stereotype, the aspect of being sneaky with your dexterity score, and of course, this will combo with something that we're going to get a little bit later. But yeah, this is a really, really good list. I really like this. And then finally, we're going to look at our starting equipment. Now, this does not affect our ranking, but I just like to mention it just because a lot of people do gold buy here. So I don't really put a whole lot of stock in the starting equipment, but here's what it is. You get a rapier or a short sword. I would go rapier pretty much all the time, unless you really need that slashing damage for, you know, the slasher feat or something like that. You know, rapier is piercing, but I mean, I think you're fine with a rapier because it does a little more damage. Then you've got a short bow and 20 arrows, or another short sword right there. So you could have 2 short swords or a rapier and a short sword, whichever one you want to do there. You've got a burglar's pack, dungeoneer's pack, or an explorer's pack. The packs are fine. I'm not really a huge fan of what all the packs come with, but it is what it is. Leather armor, 2 daggers, and thieves' tools. That's pretty much all you need right there, to be honest, at least to get started. I like that part a lot because we just need light armor. We're basing everything on our dexterity here most of the time. 2 daggers, that's a great weapon for the rogue. And of course, thieves' tools, so that we can be a rogue and open locks and other things, or at least attempt to. So pretty cool there overall as an overall package. When you look at how it works functionally with the rogue, I think that you can get a little more value than what's really on paper, right? You don't have heavy armor proficiency, you don't have medium armor proficiency. But if you're going to be a dexterity-based character, you don't care. It doesn't matter. I don't want it. I want some studded leather armor and maybe some magical studded leather armor as I go up in level. That's all I need, right? That's all that I really care about. So in that regard, I'm not really that concerned about the armor department. We are not bulky at all. We do not have a lot of health with our D8, which is a little rough. Our saving throws, we get dexterity, which is the best one in the game, and we get intelligence, which is the worst one in the game. So those kind of wash out. We go ahead and pick up thieves' tools proficiency right off rip. Usually it's not a factor, but here it's necessary. 4 skills, that's really, really good. And the weapons, you know, we don't get martial weapons, or at least the entire list. We get a small list, but as long as we have rapiers and short swords, I think we really have everything that we need here. So I think overall this is pretty solid. I've got to give this starting out an 8 out of 10. I think that all of these here are pretty solid. The HP is holding us back a little bit, but overall, I think everything here really looks quite good to be a well-rounded character that can do a lot of different things. Now that we are taking levels, we get expertise at level 1, and this is going to double our proficiency bonus with 2 skills of our choice. We also could opt to double our proficiency bonus with our thieves' tools. We get to then take 2 more when we reach 6th level in rogue. This is pretty fantastic, right? Of course, everything in 1D&D considers this an expert class, right? I don't know if you've read a whole lot into 1D&D, but expert classes now have this expertise feature. You've got this, you've got rangers, and now they've added the bards as well. So it's interesting how they've done these things, but expertise is just, it's really good. It's really good. You get 2 skills and you get to double your proficiency bonus, which is really good. Most people are going to go with stealth and thieves tools at level 1, but you can do whatever you want in order to make sure that your character does what you need it to do, and that's really fantastic. There's really not a downside to this. Pretty cool. I've got to give it a 9 out of 10. It's pretty exciting to be able to be such a skill monkey. You picked up 4 proficiencies off rip just through your class. You've gotten 2 more through your background. Maybe you picked 1 or 2 up through your race. You've got a lot of skill proficiencies going on here, and now 2 of them are doubled. That's wild. And eventually 4 of them. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Also at level 1 we get sneak attack, and this is the most famous feature probably in Dungeons & Dragons outside of rage on the barbarian. This allows you to add extra damage when you meet certain criteria. You can deal an extra 1d6 damage for now. That is going to increase by 1d6 every time that you reach an odd level of rogue. So when we reach level 3, it's going to go to 2d6, and at level 5, it's going to go to 3d6. And so on. Basically, it's going to scale with full casters getting new levels of spells. At least it's going to continue past, level 9 spells. But still, you get to do this if you had advantage on the attack roll with a finesse or ranged weapon, or you don't necessarily need advantage if the enemy is within 5 feet of an enemy of it. Now that's very specific wording. Usually what's going to happen is that needs to be an ally of you. That is what it's going to be 95% of the time, right? But if there's a 3-way fight going on right here, you've got your army going on, and then you got 2 other parties that are fighting. Just because the person next to your enemy isn't your ally necessarily doesn't mean you are disqualified from this. So that's one thing that's interesting that I think gets overlooked a lot, although it doesn't come up a ton. Typically it is if your fighter, your barbarian, or one of your melee fighters are up in the fray and right next to somebody who you are trying to hit. You don't need the advantage anymore. You just hit them with whatever attack you have, and you deal an extra bit of damage depending on your level. Really, really good. So yeah, it does increase pretty strongly. Like I said, every time you reach an odd level in Rogue, you get a bump, and that adds up very quickly. It's so satisfying being a Rogue and getting this extra damage every time that you make an attack, because let's be real, you should be getting this often. Sneak attack is not something, at least to me, that should be happening, only once per fight or once every other fight. I've seen DMs that run it that way. 1, it's not rules as written, and 2, it's not fun for the rogue, right? You should be dealing this extra damage a lot because it's pretty easy to get advantage, especially once we get a little bit further in our levels. And if you have a melee combatant in your party, you can create this situation very easily. It is not something that's difficult to do at all. So for that, sneak attack's a 10 out of 10. I don't know what you expected. I don't know if you thought it was going to be something else. It's a 10 out of 10. It's free extra damage, and it's very easy to pull off most of the time. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Our final level 1 feature is Thieves Can't, and while I say that they can, for some reason this says that they can't. Basically what this is a secret language, kind of like what we talked about with Druidic way back in the day. That was a long time ago, my goodness. I'll put that up in the iCard above. But it's basically a secret language of thieves that you can communicate with certain types of writing. Maybe it's secret codes, maybe it's a coded message, it's maybe weird words that don't make any sense. You can really make it whatever you want. I typically go into campaigns without a specific plan on how I want Thieves Can't to look in each game if I have a rogue in my party. If I have a rogue in my party, I like to make sure that the rogue can be more in control of what these look like, because I think that's more fun. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. So rule of cool as far as that goes for how I'm concerned there. But yeah, it's basically short messages of like there's a meeting going down, or you know, there's going to be a shipment of something that we should go knock off, or whatever it happens to be. There's a lot of ways that you can convey these simple ideas and have a ton of fun doing it. My rogue and I worked out a secret handshake, actually, that we would figure out different types of things and do it right in front of the rest of our party. And our party would be like, well, what does that mean? And she and I knew because we had worked all of this out. I think it's super fun how you can do all of those ideas, and there are tons of different ways that you can do this. I'd love to know in the comments how you have flavored this feature in the past, because there's just a lot there, and I'd love to see that. As far as how useful is it, it depends on your campaign, and it really depends on your DM and how hard it is actually focused on, right? A DM could use this all the time. It could use it once per campaign, right? It really varies there, and so your ranking is going to be based on how much it's used. I'm going to go with a solid 6 because ultimately it's a communication tool. It's something that's not necessarily going to be super impactful unless your DM makes it impactful, in which case obviously this ranking rises. But I'm just trying to get an average here. I would say 6 is probably fair in general. Finally, we move on to level 2 and we get cunning action, and this is one of the most simple features out there, but man, it's really good. So now as a bonus action, we can dash, disengage, or hide. All of these are fantastic, right? You've got something similar to this on the monk, which of course I'll put up in the iCard above, but the problem with the monk is that it costs ki. This doesn't cost you anything. Every turn you can do this, right? Dashing doubles your speed. That's amazing. That's absolutely fantastic, because then you get to retain your action to still attack. You can disengage. You get put up in a melee position and you are a ranged character. Get out of there for free and shoot an arrow on your way out, right? You've got the hide action. This will give you advantage on your next attack as long as they didn't see you trying to do it. This is huge, right? It's very, very good. It's free, whereas people who try to do this on other classes are not getting this for free. This is just the ultimate version. This is a 10 out of 10. There is no other way that I can really rule this. It's just that good. At level 3, we would of course be getting our subclass here, but like I said, we're going to skip those for now, and we are going to be covering those over the next 9 weeks, going from the Arcane Trickster all the way down to the Thief, in order alphabetically as always. However, at level 3, we did also get an additional feature that was brought in through Tasha's, and that is Steady Aim. Steady Aim gives us something else to do with our bonus action, and that is basically foregoing our movement, and basically also foregoing our bonus action, if we're being honest, and it gives you advantage on the next attack on your current turn. That's pretty big because that is free sneak attack, right? If your allies have not quite gotten into position, or another enemy has not gotten into position, and you don't currently have a way to give yourself advantage, well, now you do. Free sneak attack, as long as you're not, you know, in some kind of a weird position. This is great, especially if you're mounted. You have to talk to your DM because a lot of people will rule this one way or the other, but technically, if your mount moves and you don't, technically you can still steady aim. I know that some DMs are not going to rule it that way, so I'm not going to say that that's always going to be the case, but that is technically how it works, as long as your character itself doesn't move. So yeah, it's pretty that can be pretty exploitable, I think, in that regard. It's really good. It's really, really good. I can't quite give it a 10 just because it does restrict your movement, and movement is very important for rogues, but so is sneak attack. So I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. Just take away one little notch, and I think that that's totally fair. At level 4, ASIs as always, nothing crazy there. Level 5, we get Uncanny Dodge, and this is an incredibly useful feature. Basically, as long as you see an attack incoming, you can use your reaction to have the damage against you. You know, I talked about rogues not being all that tanky and not having that much health, but when you're taking half from one attack per turn for free as your reaction, who cares? Who cares? It's really, really nice. As long as you see it coming, you're good. You can just take half and say no to half the damage. You get crit, you're like, I don't care, I'm taking half anyway. And it's just wild. It's just wild how good these features are. This is a really good defensive feature. Most of the time you will probably be seeing these attacks incoming, so you will most of the time be able to use this as your reaction. So I really personally consider this a 9 out of 10. It's a great defensive feature. I don't know how you would make it really any better. It's just absolutely fantastic. Level 6, of course, is our expertise improvement. We already talked about that. And then level 7 is evasion. We have not talked about that. Evasion is really good, right? We just talked about uncanny dodge. When somebody hits you with an attack, you have the damage, right? Well, with this, whenever there is an effect that is subjecting you to a dexterity saving throw, and if you pass it, you get to take half damage, of which there are a lot of these, you get to take no damage instead if you succeed, and half damage if you fail. You're really good at dex saves. You know, you're proficient, you probably have dexterity as your highest stat. You're really good at these. So most of the time you're going to be taking no damage to effects that are like this. These are your fireballs, your ice storms. There's all kinds of powerful spells that allow you to do this. And it's wild. It's absolutely wild that they gave both of these to the same class, because it just covers most incoming attacks that are going to be aimed at you. This is a 10 out of 10. I think that the combination really is what gives it a 10 for me, of uncanny dodge with evasion and how it works really well with your dexterity. That's why it's a little higher than uncanny dodge for me, is just because it does go off of your dexterity, and your dexterity is already going to be stupid good. It just makes the really good even better, and I can't really knock it for that. At level 8, we get another ASI, which everybody gets. At level 9, we get a subclass feature, which is good. Level 10, we get an extra ASI, which is cool. I'm not gonna, rank it necessarily. An extra ASI is always gonna be a 10 out of 10, right? Kind of like how I do with extra attack, which this does not get, by the way. But I mean, you get an extra ASI. You can boost your stats more. You can take another fun feature if you do that at your table. There's just so much you can do with that. It makes the character either just stronger or more customizable, and either way you win. So either way it comes out to your benefit. I like that. Level 11 though, we get reliable talent, and so we focused a lot on the combat aspect. Let's jump over to not so much the combat aspect here, as now whenever we make an ability check that allows us to add our proficiency bonus, we can now just say 10 is the lowest we can roll. If you roll a 9 or below, it's a 10, right? That's insane. That's absolutely insane, right? Especially considering that you have expertise in a lot of things. Probably at this point, you have 4 skills that are expertised right now. You, of course, would have a +4 proficiency bonus at this point, so that's +8 for those on top of your likely +5 on your dexterity. So yeah, you're doing really good. You're really sneaky. You're really sneaky. And so it's basically going to be at the point where you can almost never fail a stealth check or a thieves tools check or whatever you took proficiency or expertise in. Yeah, it's just wild. It's absolutely wild what you can do with this. It's really good because this now gives you something that's not necessarily combat based and makes you even better at it. So now we're becoming a lot more well-rounded as a character. And of course, remember the sneak attack is improving every time that we reach an odd level. So it's insane. Reliable talent, 9 out of 10. It's really strong. Gives you really good options both in social situations and also in just out of combat, whatever it happens to be. If it's, if you need to make a strength check and for some reason you took a proficiency in that, great. You can make a really strong athletics check. Maybe, depending on your modifier. But there's just all kinds of ways that you can do this. And again, it just makes you that much more reliable on the party to get these basic things done, that if you fail, then your party could be in a bind. So it's really useful. Level 12, of course, is a normal ASI that everybody gets. Level 13 is a subclass feature. And then 14 is blind sense. This is basically the same thing as the fighting style as what you get with the fighter or anything else back at level 1. Basically the blind fighting style. As long as you are able to hear, you are aware of the hidden and invisible creatures within 10 feet of you. Now, the wording here is a bit specific, so technically it's not blind sight as it's, you know, specifically written. It is a little different. To me, I do think that it's very late to be getting something like this, and a lot of people who, you know, make these builds will start with fighter anyway, and then you could do this. I don't think that this is necessarily going to come up as much as what it seems unless you are a melee character. Otherwise, you're probably going to want to be in the back doing things. Now, this does help in the case of an ambush, right? If something invisible is trying to ambush you, you're going to know, but not till it's 10 feet behind you. So by that point, it might be too late. I don't know. I don't think that this is quite as good as what it makes itself out to be. It's fine. It's fine. I think that's ultimately this is about a 6 out of 10. I think it's slightly above average. It's nice to have. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but it's also not insanely exciting either. Level 15 gives a slippery mind, and I talked about having the best saving throw in the game and the worst. Well, how about we just have the best and the second best as we pick up Wisdom Saving Throw Proficiency, which is just wild. We don't even have to take Resilient. We just get it for free. Yeah, it's late, but it's fine, right? Wisdom saving throws come up all the time. It's basically Dexterity and Wisdom are the two most common ones that you're going to run into, and rogues get both of the proficiencies built into the class, which is really, really nice. Overall, 9 out of 10. It's really good for in combat if somebody tries to mind control you or dominate or you name it. By this point, you're dealing with some really high level stuff. Yeah, this is a really, really good thing to have overall. Level 16, of course, is a normal ASI. Level 17 is going to be another subclass feature, and level 18 is going to give us Elusive. Elusive is going to make it to where no attack rolls have advantage against us as long as we are not incapacitated. Again, this is just wild. It's just insane. And yeah, it does need to be a level 18 feature because that's crazy, right? Opposing rogues that would be using steady aim to go against you, doesn't matter. You get knocked prone and now you've got somebody staring above you trying to hit you, doesn't matter. You just can't be hit with advantage because you are just that slippery. It's great. It's really, really good, and it absolutely will come up a lot. Even, at level 18, it's going to come up quite a bit, and this is going to really, really come into play a lot and save your butt. Yeah, this is a 9 out of 10. It's really, really good. I don't think it's perfect necessarily, but I don't know of a way to make it really any better. I think it's really nice. 19, of course, is going to be our normal, final ASI, nothing crazy there. And then finally, Stroke of Luck. Again, just going wild here. So if you are going to make an attack roll and you miss, you can just make it hit instead. And if you fail an ability check, you can just say that it's a 20. You got a 20. It's absolutely insane. Now, of course, this is once per rest, so it is limited in its usage, but still, that's really, really good. It's really nice. It helps you both in combat and in situations that are outside of it. You've already got reliable talent, so for the most part, you're already doing pretty reliably. This is when you really have that go for broke skill check that has to succeed or else something really bad happens. This gives it to you. It's really, really good and just gives you one guaranteed success per rest, which is absolutely wild. Really, really good. Yeah, gotta be a 9 out of 10. It would be a 10 if it wasn't limited, but I think it needs to be, and it's just really, really strong. So how do we rank the rogue versus all of the other classes? As you can tell, this thing is really, really good, right? Dexterity is the best stat in the game, and we focus on it. It gives us a really good AC, it gives us a great attack bonus, it gives us amazing dexterity saving throws, especially with our proficiency. We get a ton of tools both for in combat and outside of combat. We are ultimately a skill monkey. Us and the bards really are really would excel at that. Expertise allows us to be really good at some specific things, including thieves tools, including stealth. You can get in, get out, do whatever you want. Really cool. You're dealing tons of damage with sneak attack. You of course can then just not take damage, or at least take less damage with elusive and uncanny dodge. Steady aim gives you free sneak attack. Cunning action just makes you either run faster or hide better, or just get out of a sticky situation. No matter what, this builds the backbone of a really strong and agile character that can do a lot of different things, and leaves us a lot of room for customizability, both in our subclass and in our actual feats that we take and our ASIs. Remember, we get an extra ASI with this, which is a really distinct advantage that hardly any other classes have, right? The fighter gets an extra, but there aren't a lot out there that do. And so that's a really useful feature. Overall, the Rogue has got to get a 10 for me. It is really good. Not every feature gets a 10, right? But the combination of everything together just makes it really good. And so I really challenge those of you who are playing the Rogue, not only because it's really good, but I challenge you to play a really interesting character, right? There are tons of subclasses out here that are really fun and give you a completely different way to spin this chassis and make it your own. So I'd love to know what your favorite Rogue character you've seen, played as, experienced, whatever it happens to be. I'd love to know about that in the comments down below. So that's our video for today. I appreciate all of you for sticking around and watching all of that. Next week, we start talking about the Arcane Trickster, and I am really looking forward to that. Till then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.